Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going on a bit of a journey. Together, we're going to explore how the simple, beautifully packaged stories we constantly tell ourselves, whether they're about human history or global spirituality, are actually often way less interesting than the deeply complex, messy reality.
You see, as human beings, our brains absolutely love simple narratives. We crave clean, cinematic aesthetics. We want obvious heroes, dramatic endings, and tidy little life lessons. But today, well, we are going to completely shatter a few of those preconceptions, and we're going to do it using cold, hard facts pulled directly from our historical and cultural records.
Okay, let's dive right into this with an absolute classic. Picture Christopher Columbus, the famous explorer, triumphantly discovering America. It's an image burned into countless textbooks, right? But this popular narrative actually sets up a massive historical illusion. Because think about it. You simply cannot discover a place where millions of people already live. Indigenous populations had called the Americas home for at least 15,000 years, building entire massive civilizations that rose and fell long before European ships ever showed up. And Columbus wasn't even the first European. Norse Vikings, led by Leif Erikson, reached North America roughly 500 years before Columbus was even born. What's even wilder is that Columbus died still firmly believing he had found a route to India, which actually is exactly why the mistake of calling indigenous Americans Indians stuck around for centuries.
Now, let's jump over to ancient Rome. The movies always tell us two gladiators enter, one leaves. But the actual financial reality here is what's truly fascinating. Gladiators were incredibly expensive investments. Training, housing, and feeding a skilled fighter took years. Having them fight to the death in every single match would be like buying a multi-million-dollar racehorse and just shooting it after a single race. It would be financially catastrophic. Records actually suggest that only about 1 in 5 matches ended fatally. Most just ended in surrender. These fighters were a lot more like wealthy celebrities with fans and groupies than the doomed, miserable prisoners we see in Hollywood epics.
And speaking of dramatic Hollywood embellishments, look at the Salem witch trials of the 1690s. The popular image is innocent people being burned at the stake. But the truth? Zero. Literally 0 people were burned in Salem. While Europe was indeed busy burning accused witches, American colonists operated under English law, which dictated hanging. 20 people were hanged, and one man, Giles Corey, was pressed to death with heavy stones. It just goes to show that reality doesn't really need fiery embellishment to be terrifying. All right, here is another statistic you have almost certainly heard. Life in the Middle Ages was so brittle that the average lifespan was just 30 years old. But I want you to consider why this very famous piece of trivia is deeply, deeply misleading.
So the crucial point here is infant mortality. It was utterly catastrophic back then. Roughly 30 to 50% of all children died before age 5. If half your population tragically dies at age 2, and the other half survives and lives to be 70, well, your mathematical average lifespan is 36. But nobody is actually living to exactly 36. If a medieval person managed to survive childhood, they routinely lived well into their 60s or 70s.
It's crazy how sometimes we literally reinvent the past based on a simple mistake. When you think of ancient Greek and Roman statues, you probably picture pristine, minimalist white marble, right? Well, modern imaging reveals that these statues were originally covered in realistic, bright colors. We're talking skin tones, vivid clothing, painted eyes, but the paint weathered away over millennia. So when Renaissance artists eventually dug them up, they found this colorless stone and mistakenly assumed the ancients just loved pure white marble. That one simple misunderstanding accidentally created a 500-year Western aesthetic.
And this aesthetic reinvention even shaped the Wild West. Picture a mid-1800s frontier cowboy. You almost immediately imagine a wide-brimmed Stetson hat. But real cowboys mostly wore round, hard bowler hats. Why? Because they were incredibly practical. They stayed on your head in the wind, and they protected you from low branches. The iconic Stetson wasn't even introduced until 1865. The cowboy image we all know today was mostly a costume design trick from early 1900s Hollywood that just fed right back into the public consciousness. And this brilliantly illustrates how simple errors change history, even in our fairy tales. Cinderella's famous glass slippers, they are very likely the result of a 1697 French translation error. The French word for squirrel fur is ver, which sounds almost exactly like verre, the French word for glass. Now, fur slippers make a lot of practical sense for dancing at a winter ball. Glass slippers, on the other hand, are a total theatrical absurdity created by a misunderstood word. So, from historical myths to the tapestry of global beliefs, if human beings are so incredibly driven to neatly package our past, It makes perfect sense that we'd apply that exact same drive to the universe itself, constructing a beautifully interconnected web of world religions. Let's start by looking at the massive scale of the two largest faiths on the planet. Christianity has 2.4 billion followers, and Islam has 1.9 billion. What is so deeply fascinating here is their interconnectedness. They actually share the same God, and both trace their roots straight back through Abraham. The primary divergence really comes down to the final messenger. Christians believe Jesus was the divine Son of God who died for humanity's sins, while Muslims deeply respect Jesus as a prophet, but believe Muhammad was the final, unedited human voice that God spoke through. But where did the foundational architecture for these Abrahamic faiths actually come from? Well, here is the hidden thread: Zoroastrianism. It's an ancient Persian religion that created the cosmic blueprint we are all so familiar with today. A universe locked in a battle between one good god and one evil force, the concept of human free will, a final judgment, and that classic dichotomy of heaven versus hell. These were all core to Zoroastrianism long before Christianity, Islam, and Judaism absorbed them into their own cosmologies. Shifting our focus to Eastern philosophies, we find Hinduism, a 4,000-year-old collection of beliefs with thousands of gods. But look closely at the concept of Brahman. Most Hindus will tell you those thousands of gods, like Vishnu, Shiva, Ganesh, they are really just different faces of one ultimate reality. Picture a massive ocean. The gods are merely different waves, but it's all the exact same water. The ultimate goal here isn't getting to a heaven, it's actually escaping the endless cycle of rebirth, samsara, to dissolve back into that ultimate reality. In stark contrast to the modern world's total obsession with hustle, willpower, and conquering nature, we have Taoism from ancient China. The core teaching here is Wu Wei, or effortless action. Now, it's not laziness. It's about stopping the endless fight against how things naturally unfold. It's about reading the current of the river instead of exhausting yourself paddling upstream. It is a profound philosophy of harmony over control. Now, on the completely other end of the spectrum of personal effort, look at Jainism. This faith takes the logic of nonviolence to its absolute maximum. Because if you truly believe that every single living thing has a sacred soul, well, strict vegetarianism is just the baseline. Devout Jain monks literally sweep the ground so they don't step on insects, they wear cloth masks to avoid accidentally inhaling them, and they completely refuse to eat root vegetables because pulling them up might kill microscopic organisms in the soil. It is a razor-sharp, incredible commitment to their foundational logic. Over in Japan, we find Shintoism. What really sets Shintoism apart is that there is no founder, no single holy book, and no strict commandments. It is just a deeply rooted sense that the landscape itself is alive. The core belief centers around kami, nature spirits living inside mountains, rivers, storms, and even ancestors. It's a religion woven so tightly into the daily life of Japan that small, active shrines are casually tucked into subway stations and modern office buildings. As we move into more modern faiths, we encounter the Baha'i Faith, founded in 1800s Iran. It now has about 8 million followers worldwide. And the Baha'i Faith makes this fascinating, radically unifying claim. They say all major religious founders were fundamentally right. They believe Moses, Buddha, Jesus, and Muhammad were all essentially messengers from the exact same God, simply delivering a message tailored for their specific time periods. Because of this, they preach that humanity is one race, genders are entirely equal, and that science ultimately belongs hand in hand with religion. The beautiful, messy reality of human belief becomes incredibly apparent in syncretic faiths, religions that intentionally blend different elements together. Take Caodaism in Vietnam, which chaotically but beautifully blends Christianity, Buddhism, and Taoism, even elevating figures like Victor Hugo and Winston Churchill to sainthood. Or Rastafarianism, which built a theology of resistance and identity around the 1930s Ethiopian emperor Haile Selassie, viewing him as the physical return of God, and using cannabis as a secret spiritual tool. And then there's Spiritism, immensely popular in Brazil based on 1800s French writings that claim souls continually reincarnate to evolve, and that the dead actively communicate with us through mediums. We also see groups that take traditional Christianity and completely rewrite the rules. Mormonism, founded in the 1830s, adds the Book of Mormon as equal scripture to the Bible and holds the literal belief that humans can eventually become gods who rule their own planets in the afterlife. Meanwhile, Jehovah's Witnesses believe something very different. They interpret the Book of Revelation to mean exactly 144,000 people will go to heaven, while everyone else who is worthy will inherit a restored, cleansed paradise right here on Earth. Finally, let's look at the newest belief system on our list, Scientology, which was founded in 1954 by science fiction writer L. Ron Hubbard.
In this faith, humans are considered thetans, immortal alien souls trapped in bodies with absolutely zero memory of their past lives. Followers pay for highly structured sessions called auditing, using an e-meter to clear spiritual stress. And if you reach the secret upper levels, the cosmology reveals a story of a galactic overlord named Xenu, who detonated billions of souls in volcanoes on Earth 75 million years ago, which they believe is the root cause of humanity's problems today.
So from Roman gladiators tapping out of a fight rather than dying, to the brilliantly painted real statues of ancient Greece, to a 4,000-year-old belief that we are all just ripples on the exact same cosmic ocean, the messy, unedited, brilliantly chaotic reality of human history and belief